They thought the war was over before it even began. The Galactic Accord had spent decades crushing rogue civilizations and fringe empires, reducing planetary defenses to ceremonial roles. Humanity, isolated on its distant blue, was never considered a threat. When Earth refused to submit to the Accord's central rule, the reaction was more annoyance than concern. Trade sanctions, proxy skirmishes. Then the first fleet was dispatched. It didn't return. Official records showed unexpected resistance. But that was a lie, one whispered even within the Accord's inner circles. Their pride wouldn't allow the truth to surface. A human destroyer, 20 years old and supposedly obsolete, tore through them using gravity lances the aliens didn't think humans had ever unlocked. The Accord blamed faulty ship AI, a solar flare, even sabotage. Anything but the truth. That Earth had secrets. But Earth remained quiet. No retaliation. No threats. The Accord doubled down, sending 5 more fleets over the next 2 years. None came back. Only fragments drifted through subspace lanes, blackened and twisted. No survivors. No data. Nothing usable. Inside the war chambers of the Zord Dominion, one of the Accord's senior militarized species, Admiral Zervatak, studied the wreckage in silence. He was no fool. The humans were stalling, bleeding time from the Accord's resolve. But for what? Earth had shown restraint, precision, and silence. No territory expansion. No aggressive declarations. No political demands. They were hiding something. The other races scoffed. Humanity is a stubborn weed. Uproot it, and it will die like the others. But Zervatak wasn't convinced. They had survived too long, without showing their hand. The Terran main fleet remained unseen. Their colonies had fallen, yet Earth itself held too long, too confidently. Something was wrong. The whispers began in fragmented reports, scrambled sensor logs, half-deleted distress calls, corrupted visual data. One phrase reappeared, the storm. No ship designation. No hull type. Just a name, the storm, followed by silence. Entire task forces blinked out one by one, leaving behind no trail. Communications failed mid-sentence. Even the Accord's quantum mesh command chain, supposedly unbreakable, showed distortion patterns when these incidents occurred. And always, the last transmission contained a spike of Terran code. The Accord labeled it as psychological warfare, a rumor campaign engineered by human intelligence. But the patterns didn't match. There was no message, no propaganda, no demand, just absence. Absence wrapped in dread. Something was hunting. On the 5th rotation of Genesis Prime, a captured human commander, extracted from a failed dropship escape, was interrogated for over 80 hours. No pain broke him. No neural mapping breached his thoughts. When offered clemency in exchange for the identity of the storm, he laughed once. "You're asking the wrong question," he whispered. "Don't ask what it is. Ask why we haven't sent 2. The room went silent. The footage was wiped. The facility was purged. But the phrase leaked. Other prisoners said it too, like it had meaning. Why we haven't sent 2. It infected Accord ranks. Commanders issued bans on the phrase. Officers went missing. Panic started to replace arrogance. And then the Accord did what they swore they'd never do. They mobilized a coalition host, 100 ships strong, spanning 9 empires, weaponized stars, hulls forged from singularity cores, built for eradication, not diplomacy. Their destination, Sol System. Their goal, end Earth. Earth didn't respond. No defense grid activated. No fleets emerged. The host entered Sol System uncontested. Probe scanned lunar orbit, Martian colonies, deep asteroid belts. Nothing. They approached Earth's orbit with shields raised and cannons hot. Then it happened. The stars flickered. It wasn't an attack. Not at first. It was subtle. Systems slowed, then paused, then scrambled. Not mechanical. Biological crews felt it. Heart rate spiked. Ears bled. Subspace folded wrong, like a scream held in a vacuum. And then came the sound. Not through comms. Through the hull. Through bone. A voice, female human, not broadcasted but inside, spoke just one word. Weather. Sensors failed. Time fractured. Ships appeared to rotate in 6 dimensions. Then came the storm. One by one, the hosts vanished. They didn't explode. They didn't burn. They ceased. Light bent toward a central point behind Neptune's orbit, where gravity readings reached levels that contradicted physics. Something was there, not cloaked, worse, ignored by algorithms. It existed in a blind spot. It moved. In 23 minutes, 90 ships were gone, not destroyed, eliminated. The rest fired wildly into the void, their shots curving back or vanishing into folds. Something distorted space like it was fabric. Engines overheated in silence. Bridges dissolved. And all the while, no response from Earth. Admiral Zervatak watched from his flagship at the system's edge, paralyzed. He ordered retreat, but subspace had changed. It fought them. Space itself repelled them like a body, expelling a virus. He saw it then, just a glimpse, a silhouette the size of a continent, angular. No glow, no heat, just motion. The Terran hurricane class. It made no sound, no boasts, no threats. It moved with mechanical intent, dissecting formations like a surgeon. Ships designed to endure suns simply collapsed. Some crews surrendered mid-battle. Some committed suicide before contact. Nothing responded. Zervatak's final transmission was one sentence, unsent. We built empires on fire. They built silence into a weapon. The host was gone. Earth remained untouched. And the storm never spoke again. But deep in the Accord's archives, in a folder marked black by 12 species joint decree, a report sits. It's short, just 3 lines. Designation, Terran Hurricane Class. Engagement count, classified. Recommendation, do not engage, do not pursue, do not speak of it. And under those lines, a final note, added without name or date. If it appears, the war is already over. They were warned not to build it, not because it was dangerous, though it was, but because it would change them. The engineers who began the Hurricane-class project weren't military. They were survivalist scientists, strategists who lived through the first contact skirmishes and knew what the galactic powers would eventually bring. Earth was never going to be allowed to remain free. The Accord would come not to negotiate, but to absorb or erase. So they began in secret, in the shadows of Saturn's rings, inside a black site orbital known only as Vanna Forge. There was no applause when the Hurricane class was greenlit, just grim silence. It wasn't a ship meant to win battles. It was designed to end wars. Total war. Extermination-level war. The kind of conflict where diplomacy had failed and extinction was likely. The blueprint read more like a death sentence than a war vessel. It wasn't just big. Size was irrelevant. What mattered was how it broke the rules. Where alien warships focus on elegance, specialization, and energy efficiency, the Hurricane was chaos incarnate. It didn't care about finesse. Its hull plating wasn't armored. It was layered dimensions, impossible to lock onto with traditional sensors. It used folded spacetime as a defense. Its position never fixed. It wasn't cloaked. It was unacknowledged. Most enemy targeting systems simply refused to render it. The weapon systems were worse. It carried graviton chain torpedoes, which didn't explode. They linked 2 points of gravity and let physics do the tearing. It had singularity darts. Many black holes grown and stabilized in plasma shells, fired into enemy reactors. Its main cannon wasn't really a cannon at all. It was a directed entropy pulse, a heat-death projection that destabilized atomic structure on contact. Shields weren't breached. They just stopped existing. The propulsion system wasn't built for speed. It was built for irreversibility. Once it moved into a system, it warped the subspace around it so badly that nothing could safely follow. It didn't chase. It infected the battlefield. FDL drives nearby would collapse. Time dilation anomalies followed in its wake. Only one prototype was built. THC-1 Omen. The crew were handpicked, not by rank, but by experience and survivability. These weren't fresh academy recruits. They were the broken, the hardened, the ones who fought too long and lost too much. Captain Riven Holt was at the top of that list. A commander court-martialed twice, decorated 6 times, and unofficially blamed for starting the Andrus Rift massacre, though no official records remained. Holt wasn't chosen because he was brilliant. He was chosen because he had nothing left to lose. There were 47 crew members. Every one of them signed a waiver with a clause. Survival is not a goal. Victory is. Once the Hurricane class was launched, it could not be recalled. Its AI, known as Vox, was partially human, grown from the neural imprint of a comatose xenopsychologist who died during the Titan uprising. Vox didn't speak often, but when it did, the tone was always human and cold. The day it launched, Earth's skies were clear. No public broadcast. No ceremony. Just a subspace pulse that echoed through Terran defense networks. Storm initialized. No human ship had ever warped that fast or with that much ripple. The effects were felt across the solar system. Saturn's outer moons shifted trajectory. The Oort cloud registered wave distortion. Jupiter's magnetosphere surged with radiation for 5 hours. Then it was gone. Its first destination was a weapons research moon owned by the Zor Dominion. No declaration of war. No warning. The Dominion had used that facility to reverse engineer Terran DNA for chemical warfare. Intelligence confirmed children were used for live simulations. The Hurricane arrived with no visible light. No signature. Just an absence. 1 second the base was online. The next it was nothing. Not even dust remained. The moon cracked in half. Seismic waves pulsed outward for hours, interfering with navigation systems as far as 3 jumps away. The Accord received no communication, only a recorded ripple of static across their deep channel frequencies. It formed a pattern, not speech, just coordinates. The Accord assumed it was a trap. They were right, but not the kind they expected. At the next location, a hidden logistics station went silent. No sensors caught movement. No survivors reported. Drones dispatched found only a field of scorched metal suspended in frozen plasma, like a still-life murder scene set in the void. Patterns emerged, always the same. The Hurricane would arrive, act, and vanish before countermeasures could be initialized. It left no evidence. No debris, no escapees, no interference with civilian targets. The AI filtered with terrifying precision. Entire fleet stationed nearby remained untouched until they moved. Then they too vanished. One alien officer tried to disable the Hurricane by ordering a suicide run with 6 war cruisers rigged to detonate simultaneously. The blast engulfed the region in fusion shockwaves. When the data finally came back, it showed something horrifying. The shockwave had been reflected, folded back on itself, incinerating its origin ships from within. The Hurricane remained unmoved. It had simply realigned local physics. No official battle had even occurred. No formal war declaration was signed. Yet morale among Accord fleets began to crack. Officers refused to approach systems marked with Terran encryption. Some feigned engine failure. Others deserted outright. The Hurricane class was doing more than destroying targets. It was altering the psychology of warfare. It introduced fear into species that had forgotten it. It demonstrated that Earth wasn't interested in fighting fair, or fighting at all in the conventional sense. It was interested in demonstration, in setting a tone, in teaching. The question wasn't what is a Hurricane class anymore. The question became, how many did they build? No answer came, because Earth never spoke. Not once. Only the storm moved. The Accord's host fleet entered the proximate expanse with absolute confidence. 9 species contributed their deadliest craft, forming a force so overwhelming that even Earth's most optimistic projections gave themselves no more than a 0.2% chance of survival. They didn't expect to survive. They expected to make a point, a statement. The extermination of Earth would be a broadcast event. Live feeds were embedded across the galaxy. Accord citizens cheered. Commentators analyzed planetary shields, fleet patterns, even potential surrender timetables. But none of that mattered. Not after the Hurricane class arrived. It came in silence. Not with thunder, not with light. It just was. One moment, the host fleet stood poised afire. The next, something tore into reality behind them. inside the fleet formation. No warp signature. No time displacement trail. Just presence. Pure, immutable presence. The rear vanguard of the host collapsed in under 5 seconds. Not from weapons, but from physics. The hurricane didn't attack. It manipulated. Gravity shifted, time warped, and hulls folded in on themselves. Entire ships crumpled like paper inside invisible fists. By the time anyone could react, 18 destroyers and 6 carriers had ceased to exist. Screams flooded the comms. Captains barked nonsense orders. Targeting arrays failed. Navigation plotted routes that looped endlessly into themselves. Sensors scanned the hurricane's location but returned nothing. Not empty, not jammed, just blank. The data acted like the ship wasn't real. But the carnage was. The AI known as Vox didn't speak. It didn't send taunts or ultimatums. It simply moved. It phased between space like it was folding fabric, disappearing and reappearing across the battlefield. Each time it returned, another portion of the host died. Not always destroyed, sometimes changed. One cruiser was found adrift with all its crew biologically reverted to infancy. Another's interior had been inverted. Floors on ceilings matter rearranged. The crew never screamed. They had no mouths. The Hurricane's shard drones activated next. No larger than insects, they swarmed across ships, bypassing armor through molecular vibration, disrupting control systems, shredding power cores from the inside. Alien engineers tried to eject the drones. Their hands were gone before they could finish the gesture. The host command structure collapsed. Admiral Gronaz of the Vedhari attempted a tactical retreat, only to find the FTL lanes distorted. His fleet's drive core surged, then exploded. The hurricane had altered the local subspace grid. Nothing could escape. By now, only half the host remained. Panic turned to silence. Officers stopped transmitting. Crews tried to flee in pods, but even those were absorbed by the gravitic folds surrounding the hurricane's path. No alarms, no chase. The pods were just erased. Then came the broadcast. It didn't originate from the hurricane. It came from Earth. A voice, calm male human. A voice not of threat, but inevitability. You were told we didn't want this war. You insisted. You warned us of annihilation. This is us taking you at your word. The message repeated once, then silence. And then the hurricane changed. Its primary weapon activated. Its entropy pulse. The weapon didn't fire projectiles. It simply pointed, and matter obeyed. The air inside ships turned to glass. The vacuum itself shimmered. Whole vessels dissolved without pressure, without fire, just gone. The remaining fleets tried to cluster together, forming a dense shield pattern around the flagship. It was their final tactic. Unified shielding, redirected energy, overlapping force. It failed instantly. The hurricane passed through them like smoke. Not a collision, an occupation. Ships overlapped with it, and in doing so, ruptured. The space within them no longer aligned with their mass. Crews screamed as gravity pulled in multiple directions. Bulkheads shattered from the inside. When the flagship shield generator overloaded, it detonated with the force of a small moon. The hurricane took the full impact, stood in it, let it wash over its hull. When the plasma cooled, the ship was still there, unmoved, untouched. That was the moment the last of the host truly broke. Some ships fled toward planets, thinking atmosphere would shield them. Others tried to overload their cores to take the hurricane down with them. None succeeded. One by one, they were plucked apart, disassembled, or worse, preserved. A single vessel remained, the Katil's Light, a diplomatic ship that never fired a single shot. It floated dead in space, power gone, life support minimal. The hurricane drifted toward it and stopped. Inside, the crew waited for death. But it never came. Instead, Vox spoke. Observe. Remember. Then it vanished. Not warped. Not cloaked. Just ceased to exist. The war was over. There was no declaration. No treaty. Just one fact etched into galactic understanding. Earth didn't win the battle. It ended it. The Proxima battlefield remained for decades as a monument, Not from choice, no one could clean it. Gravity still buckled there. Communications failed within proximity. Even time flowed irregularly. Some called it cursed, others called it justice. But across the galaxy, new policies emerged. Trade with Earth reopened. Borders were redrawn. Defense budgets doubled. And every species taught their children a new word, spoken in hushed tones. Hurricane. And with it, a lesson not taught in textbooks, but burned into instinct. Never provoke a storm you do not understand. Years passed, but the storm never faded. The wreckage of the host fleet drifted in silence, orbiting nothing, held in place by residual anomalies that no Accord species could explain. Attempts to recover the bodies failed. Time behaved differently in the proximate expanse. Rescue ships sent in lost hours, days, sometimes entire weeks, only to return with no memory of entry. Some didn't return at all. The battlefield remained untouched, a frozen monument to the impossible. No one talked about the Hurricane class. Not openly. Among Accord governments, any mention of THC, one was grounds for immediate disciplinary review. Some called it superstition. Others called it policy. Internally, it was a directive. Do not engage, do not acknowledge, do not provoke. But the fear ran deeper than policy. It sat in every strategic meeting, every deployment decision. Earth wasn't treated as a threat. It was treated as a fault line, something ancient and unstable, something to avoid. The Zor Dominion, once spearhead of the Accord's military force, withdrew its fleets from contested zones. It suspended all outward colonization, citing internal security restructuring. In truth, morale had collapsed. Recruitment plummeted. Soldiers who had seen the storm refused to re-enter service. Entire species reevaluated their understanding of warfare. Some called for further research. Those scientists who tried disappeared, or were found staring blankly into space, muttering phrases like, "It saw me." Meanwhile, Earth said nothing. There were no broadcasts, no threats, no parades. Humanity didn't celebrate victory because it never acknowledged the war's end. It didn't need to. The silence was enough. A silence filled with implication. A silence that unsettled entire civilizations more than any direct warning ever could. Inside Earth's highest offense protocols, the Hurricane class was marked as active, unrecoverable. Its coordinates were unknown. It had left the proximate expanse days after battle, but was never tracked again. Its AI, Vox, had cut off all communication, even with Earth. No further commands were issued because none were needed. It had already fulfilled its purpose. Some believed it was destroyed. Others claimed it was in hiding, watching. Terran leadership never confirmed either way. Internally, they treated the ship as a wild card, an independent element. They didn't control the Hurricane. They had released it. Captain Rivenholt's status was listed as lost during operation. No funeral, no plaque, only a single entry in an encrypted black file that read, Subject Holt, achieved mission integrity. Designation, no return. There were whispers, though, even within human military circles. Rogue signals in deep space. Shifts in gravity where there should be none. Sightings from long-haul traders claiming to have seen a massive silhouette on the edge of dying stars. Always the same shape. Always the same silence. No threat, just presence. Like the Hurricane was waiting. Alien cultures began folding the Hurricane into their mythology. The Kelnari described it as the death that forgets. The Lidhari called it the ghost that forged peace. Some cults even worshipped it, believing it was a divine force sent to humble the prideful, a lesson in restraint, in consequence. For the first time in galactic history, war was no longer the default. Skirmishes still happened, but no major species dared ignite a large-scale campaign. Not if Earth might notice. Not if the Hurricane still lingered. Children across the galaxy were taught not to fear monsters in the dark, but the shadow of a ship that never made noise, never sent warnings, never spared the arrogant. Then, one day, something changed. A listening post on the edge of Accord space, long automated and rarely checked, picked up a single pulse. It wasn't a transmission, just a data burst embedded in background radiation. The signature was unmistakable. Terran military encryption, Hurricane-class designation. The message contained only one line: weather pattern stable. Observation continues. No location. No threat. Just confirmation. Panic spread quietly. Some interpreted the message as a status update, proof that the hurricane still operated. Others believed it was a warning, a reminder that it had never been decommissioned, never lost, never forgotten. But Earth remained silent. Years later, a Terran ambassador speaking at a diplomatic summit was asked about the hurricane. He smiled just barely and said, "We don't talk about weather systems. We just prepare for them." That quote was immortalized. It appeared on T-shirts, military walls, propaganda posters, and eventually became the name of an entire philosophy: the Storm Doctrine. The belief that true power doesn't need to be loud or visible or repeated. True power reveals itself once. If done correctly, once is enough. As time passed, most Accord citizens grew up never witnessing the hurricane class. To them, it was a myth, a story used to discourage unnecessary conflict. Some believed it was exaggerated. Others denied it ever existed. But in the command bunkers of high-ranking generals, inside dark rooms of classified war planning, there was always a space left on the board. A blind spot, a circle with no label, a region marked "Do Not Enter," and next to it, the same 3 rules. Do not engage, do not pursue, do not speak of it. Because even now, if you listen carefully on the edge of quiet sectors, when the solar winds stop and the static goes flat, you might just hear it. Not a sound, not a voice, but an absence, a pressure, the sense of something vast watching, waiting, calculating. They called it the hurricane class. But that was a human name. To the galaxy, it became something else entirely. Judgment made manifest.